afternoon. My name is Adrian O, Mapp, and I'm the mayor of the great city of Plainfield. I will read you a prepared statement in English, and then the statement will be read in Spanish, and after that we will take questions from the media. On Tuesday, August 8, 2023, 501 West 7th Street residents alerted the city to a potential health concern in their residential building. This alert resulted in an investigation by the mayor's task force comprised of members of our fire, health, signal, zoning, police, public works, economic development, community development, and the inspections department. The mayor's quality of life task force enforces health and safety standards for the well-being of all residents. During the inspection, the task force found numerous violations that put the health and safety of tenants at serious risk. These health concerns include mold-like stains in bathrooms and kitchen sinks, water leaks and damage in multiple apartments, several holes in ceilings throughout the apartments, broken windows, poor ventilation in kitchens, and on-capped gas conductors that were active fire hazards, as well as mice droppings along windows and kitchen counters. There was also a sewage pipe in the basement with no cap, resulting in sewage leaking onto the floor. It is imperative that residents alert the city to any and all health concerns they have within the buildings they occupy. A resident who saw the task force present at 501 West 7th Street notified the task force of several apartments at 515 West 7th Street owned by the same landlord that had not had cold water for an extended period of time. After seeing these unsafe and unhealthy conditions, the task force had no choice but to condemn the building for the health and safety of all tenants. The state inspects multi-dwelling buildings every 5 years. The last inspection at this building occurred in June of 2022, when they cited the owners with 235 violations that were never addressed. In conversation with one of the owners just a few minutes ago, he claimed he was not even aware the state inspected the building. We find that to be incredible and a demonstration of their gross neglect. It is clear to us that this landlord is heartless and uncaring about his tenants and is driven by greed and profit. The owners of the building, Charles Aryeh and Aaron Ikron, own 6 residential buildings in the city, 4 of which have been condemned. We know what occurred is very upsetting for all involved. The choice between the relocation of residents and the continued risk to their health and safety forced the city to prioritize life over temporary discomfort. The city of Plainfield will continue to investigate and prosecute all landlords and building owners that choose profit over the safety of their tenants. The health and safety of all our residents will continue to be priority number 1 for my administration. We will provide resources to help all individuals impacted by the condemnation. At this time, I will ask for this statement to be read in Spanish by one of our team members.
Buenas tardes, yo soy Leticia Vélez y soy la directora del Departamento de Inspecciones de la ciudad de Plainfield. Buenas tardes, yo soy Leticia Vélez y soy la directora del Departamento de Inspecciones de la ciudad de Plainfield. El martes 8 de agosto del 2023, los residentes del 501 West 7th Street alertaron a la ciudad sobre un posible problema de salud en su edificio residencial. Esta alerta resultó en una investigación realizada por el Grupo de Calidad de Vida, compuestos por miembros de nuestro Departamento de Bomberos, Salud, Señales, Zonificación, Policía, Obras Públicas, Desarrollo Económico, Desarrollo Comunitario y el Departamento de Inspecciones. El Grupo de Calidad de Vida hace cumplir las normas de salud y seguridad para el bienestar de todos los residentes. Durante la inspección, el Grupo de Calidad de Vida encontró numerosas violaciones que ponen en grave riesgo la salud y la seguridad de los inquilinos. Estos problemas de salud incluyen manchas similares a moho en baños y fregaderos de cocina, fugas de agua y daños en varios apartamentos, varios agujeros en los techos de los apartamentos, ventanas rotas, mala ventilación en las cocinas y conductores de gas sin tapa que eran riesgos activos de incendio, así como excrementos de ratones a lo largo de ventanas y mostradores de cocina. También había una tubería de agua residuales en el sótano sin tapa, lo que provoca que las aguas residuales se filtraran al piso. Es imperativo que los residentes alerten a la ciudad sobre todos y cada uno de los problemas de salud que tienen dentro de los edificios que ocupan. Un residente que vio el grupo de trabajo presente en 501 West 7th Street notificó al grupo de trabajo de varios apartamentos en el 515 West 7th Street, propiedad del mismo propietario, que no habían detenido agua fría durante un periodo prolongado de tiempo. Después de ver estas condiciones inseguras, el Grupo de Calidad de Vida no tuvo más remedio que condenar el edificio por la salud y la seguridad de todos los inquilinos. El Estado inspecciona los edificios de viviendas múltiples cada 5 años. La última inspección en este edificio ocurrió en junio del 2022, cuando citaron a los propietarios con 235 violaciones que nunca se abordaron. En conversación con el propietario hace apenas unos minutos, afirmó que ni siquiera sabía que el Estado inspeccionó este edificio. Nos parece increíble y una demostración de su grave negligencia. Está claro para nosotros que este propietario es despiadado e indiferente a los inquilinos y está impulsado por la codicia y las ganancias. Los propietarios del edificio Charles Eyre y Aaron Eichhorn poseen 6 edificios residenciales en la ciudad, 4 de los cuales han sido condenados. Sabemos que lo que ocurrió es muy molestoso para todos los involucrados. La elección entre la reubicación de los residentes y el riesgo continuo para su salud y seguridad obligó a la ciudad a priorizar la vida sobre las molestias temporales. La ciudad de Plainfield continuará investigando y procesando a todos los propietarios de edificios que elijan las ganancias sobre la seguridad de sus inquilinos. La salud y la seguridad de todos nuestros residentes seguirá siendo la prioridad número 1 para mi administración. Proporcionaremos los recursos para ayudar a todas las personas afectadas por la condena.
So we will begin taking questions shortly. I should tell you that we have folders with the statements as well as photographs of some of the conditions that exist in this condemned building. I should also tell you that individuals affected will be given about 2 or 3 days to remove their contents from the condemned building. And so with that, we will take questions. I will attempt to answer, and my team members here will also be able to answer.
On 2022 when the inspection was done, why didn't follow up on the tenants of the building, letting them know that all the violations that they find, so they could be aware of at any time the building could be closed, but the Isabellas make a decision without a plan where to allocate all of these people, all of these families. They're giving them 1 day to move out, all the furniture, all the children. The city is offering them, if I'm not mistaken, $500 and a couple of nights in a hotel. Right now, there are many people who lost a lot of money, a month and a half in security deposit, a month of rent. It's about $3,500. They're giving them $500. They're gonna lose over $3,500, and to rent an apartment right now in Plainfield, you need an average of $8,000 to $12,000. So what is these people gonna do without money? They need at least 3 months. Well, you guys can give them like a quick fix temporary, so they can have 3 months to save some money and find some other place to live. Because you cannot just throw them all out on the street.
Well, thank you for your question and for your concern. First, I must tell you that the responsibility for inspecting multi-family dwellings, 4 units and above, is solely the responsibility of the Department of Housing in the Department of Community Affairs in Trenton, New Jersey. The state has the responsibility to inspect all multi-family dwellings, 4 units and above. And I did mention that the state conducted an inspection in June of last year where these 235 violations were identified. The city does not have a responsibility to inspect multi-family dwellings that are 4 units or above. However, because we are concerned for the health, safety, and well-being of every person that lives in our city, anytime we get complaints from residents, we then have an obligation to respond to those complaints. And upon receiving complaints from residents in this condemned building, we responded and we identified those conditions that were so deplorable that we couldn't give 3 months because you can die in an explosion in 1 day. And so we want to minimize any potential loss of life, any compromising of public safety. And so we have that obligation once it is brought to our attention to respond in the appropriate manner. And so we choose life, we choose safety over what the landlord takes as his priority, and that is profits over the safety and well-being of his tenants. We take a different view. We want to make sure that everyone, that you and every person in this audience is living in conditions that are safe, that are secure. I don't want people to live in conditions that I would want to live in myself. And so that is at the crux of the matter. And so it's the landlord that we will continue to go after. And that is why my task force has been so busy over the last several weeks. And I should tell you that this landlord, we met with this landlord about 2 weeks ago because we condemned buildings on Arlington Avenue and on Kensington Avenue owned by this very same landlord. So safety comes first. That's paramount for this adversary.
Mayor, is there any opportunity?
Did the state of New Jersey inform the city of Plainfield that it had just issued over 200 violations on one building when they issued those violations?
The state doesn't inform us of the inspections that they conduct across the city. They are in the city every day conducting inspections, and we don't get reports of any of their inspections.
So you're saying the state of New Jersey will issue over 200 violations on a building, but a building that probably needs to be condemned and not all of the sales city hall?
I didn't hear the last part.
So the state of New Jersey will issue over 200 violations on a building that obviously at that point needed to be condemned, and not bother to sell city hall with Plainfield, New Jersey?
Well, I can tell you that We were never informed, and we are usually not informed by the state regarding the results of any of the inspections that they conduct. But they do give the landlords time to address the violations. And this landlord chose to ignore these violations.
You said that that's the landlord's fee, so what was the purpose of that fee? And you were about the other buildings that you condemned, and why were you so unaware of what was happening at 501?
Yes, the meeting that occurred a couple of weeks ago had to do with the buildings that were condemned at that time, because we had a similar situation with about 50 or so affected tenants that came to City Hall, and we had to provide emergency housing to those affected tenants. And so our meeting with the landlord had to do with the buildings that were condemned on Kensington and on Arlington. And quite frankly, we read the landlord the right act. We told them, because there were two of them that were present, we told them what needed to be done in order to bring these buildings into compliance. But at the time, we had no knowledge of what exists at 501 West 7th Street. We also tried to get into 515 West 7th, and we were unable to gain access because we don't know, but there could be similar conditions right next door at 515 West 7th.
Is there any opportunity that the city can order their using repairs or temporary dangerous space will have a is there anything the city can do to help mediate or solve the emerging bad line of food so that people have a place to live quality of housing?
Well, I can tell you that the city will not conduct repairs to any property owner's property, whether it's a residential property or whether it's a multi-family dwelling. The city has no obligation. We will not conduct repairs, but we will hold the property owners responsible for conducting and carrying out those repairs. But in the meantime, what we will do, we will provide temporary emergency housing for a few days so that the affected individual will not be exposed to the elements. And so our social services department, in collaboration with Union County, will do everything that we can to make sure that these folks are not out on the street. We will provide temporary housing and give them an opportunity to seek housing elsewhere.
Mr. Mayor, short of going after any civil penalties against the landlord, could you tell us it is up to the city to save you immensely criminal charges for broken down themselves with no place to live? Let's be honest, how many families have been displaced in the last 24 hours? And three, the city of Plainfield have enough vacant room in this city to house those who no longer have.
Answer the last question first. No, we don't have enough rooms in the city to house the affected individuals. What we do, working in partnership with Union County, the city and the county, we normally provide housing at hotels in Union County or in neighboring counties. That's what we do. That's the way we are able to provide some temporary housing assistance.
And in terms of the landlord, what is the number of people who have been told they have to evict within 24 hours? What is that number, and what, if anything, does the city do to go after the landlord short of a civil fine or penalty that
In this current condemnation, there are 49 affected units. How many individuals that translate to, we don't know. And the reason we don't know, and we addressed this with the landlord on the other condemnation, is because the landlord would lease an apartment unit to person A, and what we have been finding as a result of these inspections is that in that apartment that was leased to person A then cuts that up into several rooms. And if person A is paying $2,000 a month for the lease, that person is collecting $500 and $600 from those individuals who are rooming in those illegal converted apartments. And so what we are doing is that we are holding the landlords accountable, and they will have to appear in court to answer these charges.
Mr. Mayor, the you spoke of that was talking about his living conditions and his arrangements going forward. Talk about providing housing for a few days. What can you do, given you mentioned the importance of quality of life, people being safe in their homes? What can you do to ensure that people who are being displaced can afford to be safe wherever their home is in a week? It's not going to be their part.
What we can do and what we have been doing is providing temporary housing, giving the affected individual an opportunity to find housing elsewhere. That might be in Plainfield, but it could very well be in a neighboring municipality. We can't guarantee that these affected individuals will find housing tomorrow or next week, because we don't have control over the housing units that may be available in the city or outside of the city. But we will do our best to make sure that they're not exposed to the elements.
So how many days is Plainfield willing to pay to house them temporarily?
We usually provide temporary housing for about 5 days. Sometimes that could be more depending on the situation, but we will do our best to provide housing. And we're having conversations with our school district to see what we can do in terms of providing some shelter, as we would do in case of a hurricane or something of the sort that displaced, several people. So we are currently having conversations with our school district to look at the possibility of some temporary housing over a couple of days or so, while we work on placing affected individuals into hotels in the county or in neighboring counties.
Mr. Mayor.
I'll go here and then I'll go there.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to know what about rent control in place that's so high we can't afford to pay the rent? When we send our children to school and we can't even stay here. It's ridiculous.
We're not going to conflate that with the issue that is on hand. The issue that is on hand has to do with unscrupulous landlords that have no care or concern about the tenants that they put into their buildings. That has nothing to do with rent control, with how much a person pays for an apartment. The people at this affected building, they could be paying $500, they could be paying $1,000. It doesn't impact on the quality and the conditions in those buildings, and that's what we're here to talk about.
So, Mr. Mayor, about this landlord, obviously you've had encounters with them. What can you tell us about them? How long have they been operating in the city? Obviously, they've had multiple buildings, and why, I guess, is the state or the administration allows them to continue to operate with their track record?
As soon as we become aware of conditions, we respond, but we can't control who owns properties any part of our city. It's a free market, and anyone is free to purchase property within our city. Our obligation is to make sure that the conditions are such that the quality of life for people who are in those buildings is at a level that I would want it to be at, that you and everyone, in terms of living conditions. But we can't control who owns buildings in our city. But we've had some very serious, hard conversations with the landlord about the buildings that we inspected and condemned previously. And I had a similar conversation this morning with that landlord as well, and it did not go well.
And who are they again? What's their names and where are they from? Where are they from?
First name Charles, last name Aryeh. The other person is Aaron Ikron, Eichron.
Where are they from, sir? Do you know where they're from by any chance?
We have their phone numbers. They're from New York. We don't know, quite frankly, where they live, but we know they're from New York.
Is it a corporation, sir, or the individual owners? Do they have a corporate name?
There are LLCs.
Do you know the name of the LLC?
We can provide that information. I don't have it in front of me. We can provide that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. done any remediation on the other two properties and all of this?
No, they have not.
They intend to, they told us that.
We would hope that they intend to. That's the conversation that we had with them. We gave them the list of violations, but they haven't applied for any permits to carry out the work that's needed to be done.
And they know all these people have been given 24 hours to get out,
Yes, they do.
and their response was nothing.
Their response was, I was talking to a wall.
The mayor, what's the next step? What do they have to do? Where do they have to go to make sure that before the end, people are gonna have a place to stay?
Each of the affected tenants can go over to the tent that is right over there
All families
and make arrangements.
all families, 100%. So before yesterday, you guys called the children, you guys gonna allow those kids,
All of the affected families will be taken care of
everybody, right?
on a temporary basis.
What is
On a
the
temporary
city gonna
basis.
do? What is your administration gonna do to make sure all the people get their money back from the landlord? Are you guys willing
hold on a
to fight
second.
for us, or you just let slide with them?
No.
Another thing, the people that was disallocated a couple of months, a couple of weeks ago, they still have not found any house. So in Plainfield, there are apartments packed. Those families that were disallocated from those other buildings, living in an apartment that should be living only 5 people. Now you have like 10 people living there because there's no place to go. What are you gonna do about that? You have a solution for that, and next time your administration making a decision to close the building 24 hours, do you guys have a plan to allocate all these people? Make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again to anybody? Because what the landlords are doing right now is they're fixing the buildings and then selling to somebody else, and the rent goes up double. And all these people will be left without apartments. So is there anything you can do to make sure whenever they fix it, all these people will have an apartment to live in?
We cannot get involved in any contractual arrangements between a landlord and a tenant or a prospective tenant. That is not our responsibility as a city to get involved in contractual matters between property owners and their tenants. What we will continue to do once these situations are brought to our attention is that we will not ignore these situations. We will address these situations in the most forceful manner we possibly can. And if that means condemnation, then that is what we will do. But we will also meet with every affected individual to make sure that we provide some level of temporary housing so that they have some time to search for alternative places to reside. But we do not have the resources to house anyone for months. We're talking about taxpayer dollars that we have a limited amount of. But we will work with our partners at Union County Social Services along with this administration, and we will use grant funds as well as some taxpayer dollars to provide assistance to the best that we can. And I invite affected individuals to seek the services that we are offering so that you will have a place to stay on a temporary basis.
Mr. Mayor,
Any contact with the state to be able to get some help in dealing with this situation?
We are in contact with the state, and as a matter of fact, that's how we were able to determine that there were 235 unaddressed violations at this particular building. We are in touch with the state, and we will continue those conversations to see what additional help might be available. We are checking to find out if there are Section 8 vouchers that are involved, because depending on where or who issued those vouchers, that's where the responsibility for housing lies. And so we are in touch with the state to get some answers to questions that we have at this time.
Has the state offered any assistance helping these people out?
We are still pursuing those conversations.
just to be clear, he said they have a few days to go in and get their belongings. Do they have to get out? Nobody's in that building after 4 o'clock today. They're going to stay the night in the building.
No one one can stay overnight, the conditions are too unsafe, and we will not expose individuals once we are aware of the conditions that exist in this building that resulted in the condemnation. We have a responsibility that every person that lives here, regardless of income level, regardless of race, ethnicity, it doesn't matter to us. Once you're a human being, we're going to respond the only way we know how, and that is to make sure that the conditions that people who live in this city, that those conditions are such that's conducive to a decent quality of life. And if it doesn't exist, then we're going to take the actions that we took yesterday.
Mr. Mayor, one of the concerns that Plainfield Advisory Commission from the Spanish Mayor has is the fact that when after you put the families out, the children are the ones that suffer the consequences to become homeless. The senior citizens like me, we suffer the consequences to become homeless. We have no programs established. And the last time I suggest that we should bring and have a strategic planning done to make sure that next time you prevent the people, the families, especially our children, have a place to live and not become homeless. From Arlington, the still family that is living in the cars and the children have no place to go. They go to the 5 days that you said them given, but the hotel is only a room to sleep, nothing to eat, and have to buy money the expenses. They have robbed the people have been robbed, the landlords, the ones who rent the apartments have been robbed, the ones who cause of rent, who cause of security, and do not have $10,000 to go and get another apartment. It is imperative that your administration sit with Pacha and create a program that will help them. And even if we have to go to Landlord, Washington, we're ready.
Any other questions?
Señor alcalde, yo le quiero preguntar, ¿realmente cree que 2 días o 4 días son garantizarle la seguridad a estos niños que ya van a empezar a ir a la escuela? ¿Realmente cree que ellos van a estar seguros sabiendo que solo tienen 4 días seguros en donde vivir y el resto?
That's a very good question that you've asked, and it's one that concerns us. But the overriding concern that we have here is about the safety in the building where these individuals live. And so that is what guides us. Is it appropriate? Is it good? Is it safe for us to allow people, whether they're kids, whether they're adults, to live in unsafe conditions that could result in death in some instances? I cited the fact that there were gas stoves that had no shut-off valves of gas leaks. And we cannot allow a child who's 1 day old or a person who's 100 years old to live under those conditions. In terms of help for these individuals, we have limited resources, but our Plainfield Action Service, who oftentimes provides an assistance without payment, we will do everything that we possibly can to provide assistance, whether it's financial or otherwise, to the extent that we are able to do so. And that's why we are working in partnership with Union County, and we have reached out to the state so that we could get the assistance that we need in order to provide the assistance that you need. And so we have heart, we have compassion. We know that you are our brothers and sisters. And so we want to help you. We're not going to ignore the situation. That is why the building was condemned. Because you are our family. You are us.
Yeah, but you didn't give us enough time. That's the problem. Not
You
enough
are
time.
missing the point. City
People
comes first.
at 5:15 out of living with fear because why you're waiting to close the next building.
But listen, I'm a Plainfield taxpayer, right? My thing is, these buildings are just a block away from City Hall. This is not an overnight situation. So how you allow this to happen so long and wait till the last minute to have these people now homeless?
I think you missed a part of my statement. You missed a part of the responses that I provided to some of the questions that were asked earlier. And one of the points that I made is that
And
it
this
is the
management system,
responsibility.
how many buildings they
It is
have
the
that they're gonna do
responsibility
this?
of the state to conduct inspections of multi-family dwellings, 4 units and above. And the state does that every 5 years. They issue notices of violation where they find such violations. And they give the building owners time to address those violations. What
You
or
also
when
say
we
that
come
tried
into
to
the picture.
notify the city, but the city didn't notify the tenants.
Sir, let's be respectful.
Tried to notify the city,
Please
but
be
the city
respectful.
didn't notify the
Please
tenants.
be respectful, sir.
I'm
Please
trying
be
to.
respectful.
The answers are not up.
When we get information about the violations, we respond when we get complaints from the occupants of those buildings. That's the only way we know of those violations, because it's the state's responsibility to inspect those buildings. And upon learning of the violations, we went in because we had to respond whenever there is a threat to a person's safety. And so that's what we do. That's what we will continue to do. But the city doesn't inspect that building that's right over there. The city doesn't inspect that building. The state does that because it's 4 stories and above. And so we have an obligation. We take seriously the obligation that we have. So anytime there are 4 units or above, it's the state. And if there are complaints that we receive, as we did yesterday, we have an obligation to respond.
Last time I tried to help one family get a house rent. You know how hard it is to get a rent? They ask for 3 months deposit plus they check financial system, background, and all that. And you know that because definitely if they gotta go to rent an apartment or house, they minimum need $10,000. Plus, good record, good credit. Do you think they have a credit? What you can do with all those landlords? They always bring those situations to the people who do rent. It's really hard. And if you go to those new buildings, super fine. You gotta build the application, you gotta check background, that's fine. But do you think these people have credit to apply on that?
Well, what I can tell you is that affected individuals can speak to our Plainfield Action Services for any possible assistance. But in terms of some of the things you mentioned about security deposits, background checks, that is not unique to Plainfield. That's not unique to the property owners in Plainfield. That happens every single county across the state, across the nation.
I understand that point, but my question is, do you know how hard it's gonna be to get a house or apartment for everybody?
I understand.
Let's go book right now.
I
No
understand.
way to get rent. My question is, I understand the violations of the building, but at least maybe where you can send a letter or say, hey, guys, get ready, because this is gonna happen, especially for the kids.
We can't send a letter to say, get ready, this is going to happen. When we were notified of the conditions, we had to respond immediately. So there's no time to send a letter. And when we respond and we see the conditions that exist, then we have to take action to protect life and safety.
So now we have a solution. Tonight we have a solution, but in the solution, we're gonna be for another hour. One solution. Let's finalize the solution.
I point everyone over to the tent to seek assistance, and we will provide every affected family with temporary assistance. So I invite every affected family to go over to our Plainfield Action Services and provide them with your information, and we will take the necessary steps to get you some assistance.
What does they do? What they do? Some people live in
But they come everywhere. The building is increased and people go, the landlords rent, whatever money they want, they double the rent, that's when they do this. And the city gets involved when they're doing it out. And the city doesn't get involved.
So I want to thank everyone for being here. I empathize with all of the affected individuals, and we are here to help you the best we can. Please go over to the tent. We have copies of some of the conditions to be given to members of the media, and in the meantime, affected individuals, please go over to the tent and we will provide you with assistance. Thank you, and may God bless you.
How are we supposed to get our money back that we just paid?